On April 7, April 23, and April 24 of 2026, Anthropic, OpenAI, and DeepSeek turned 14 days into a market reset. Mythos leaked, GPT-5.5 shipped, and DeepSeek v4 dropped a 75% price shock on Huawei inference. This is not one model battle. It is capability, cost, and specialization splitting apart, and here's why this matters. The timeline is the first clue because every move lands close enough to change the meaning of the next one. On March 26th, Mythos leaks through an Anthropic CMS mistake. On April 7th, Anthropic confirms it through Project Glasswing. Then OpenAI ships Spud on April 23rd, and DeepSeek launches v4 one day later. That is a frontier race compressed into 2 weeks, and the winner depends on which race you're measuring. Before this cluster, buyers were already boxed in by production systems that worked but kept getting more expensive. Support bots, code reviewers, analytics agents, and internal search were live in production, but the monthly bill kept climbing. The evidence was vendor-shaped. Open source versus closed source choices were political, and cybersecurity teams needed power that normal model access could not safely expose. April did not create the problem, it made the problem impossible to ignore. Each lab was answering a different question about where frontier advantage actually lives. OpenAI asked whether shipping 6 GPT-5 models in 8 months could dominate the Cadence war. DeepSeek asked whether open weights and Huawei serving could crush inference cost. Anthropic asked whether a dual-use cyber model should be gated instead of released. Same industry, 3 frontiers, 3 completely different product theories. Now swing to the China side, because DeepSeek is the strategic shock. Export controls kept NVIDIA at the center of the story, and v4 does not erase that training constraint because it was still trained in the NVIDIA world. The brutal twist is serving traffic on Huawei Ascend, exactly where production dollars pile up. DeepSeek v4 is built for that cost war from the model architecture down to the serving stack. The v4 Pro story is 1.6 trillion total parameters, 49 billion active parameters, and a sparse attention stack that cuts per token compute by 73% and KV cache memory by 90%. Pair that with a 1.74 promo input price and a 0.87 promo output price, and the OpenWeight's underdog suddenly has CFO gravity. While DeepSeek attacks cost, OpenAI attacks time with a release rhythm that turns cadence into pressure. GPT-5.5, codenamed Spud, arrives 1 month after GPT-5.4 and becomes the 6th GPT-5 series release in 8 months. The reported wins are 35% fewer tokens and 20% faster equivalent tasks. That is not just a model launch. It is OpenAI trying to win by making every competitor's evaluation cycle feel stale. Completely different direction. Mythos is the model Anthropic would not simply unleash. The numbers are insane. 595 OSS-Fuzz, Tier 1 and Tier 2 crashes, plus full control flow hijack on 10 fully patched targets. That is why Project Glasswing matters for the entire safety design. Mythos is not just a chatbot with better security vibes, it is a specialist capability where distribution becomes part of the safety system. Now put the same C parser review through the 3 stacks. GPT-5.5 is the general agent path for visible engineering work. DeepSeek v4 is the cost-sensitive open weights path for scale. Mythos is the gated cyber specialist path when exploit reasoning is the job. The routing decision is not hype. It is risk, volume, compliance, and whether the failure will be visible to a user or buried inside a backend workflow. The stack comparison is where the battle gets practical. GPT-5.5 has the premium agent story, but you pay around $5 per $1 million input tokens. DeepSeek V4 Pro has the open weights cost story, but independent benchmark trust is still catching up. Claude Mythos may dominate vulnerability work, but most teams cannot access Glasswing, so no single vendor dominates every deployment surface. The evidence does not point in one direction, because every metric rewards a different kind of product. Greek Key PT 5.5 posts a strong 82.7% on Terminal Bench 2.0 and 51.7% on Frontier Math 1-3. DeepSeek V4 Pro claims 80.6% on SWE Bench verified, while landing lower on Terminal Bench. Mythos shatters the cyber frame with 595 OSS-Fuzz crashes. So this is different proof for a different frontier. Now let's flip from benchmarks to geopolitics, because the chip story changes the market story. The easy headline is that 3 models landed together. The deeper move is that DeepSeek used that news window to demonstrate frontier inference on Chinese silicon. If Huawei Ascend serving is good enough for large-scale V4 economics, then export controls still matter for training, but they no longer explain the whole AI competition story. The quality-first camp is not wrong, especially when the model is directly facing customers. Broad intelligence indices still favor Western frontier models, and blind tests can punish GPT 5.5 when it hallucinates instead of admitting uncertainty. DeepSeek's internal scores need reproduction, and some launch behaviors smelled rough. For user-facing assistance, a cheaper model that breaks trust is not a bargain, it is a reputational tax. The cost-first camp is also not wrong, especially when the workflow is high volume and mostly internal. For high-volume backend work, good enough at 1/5, the cost can dominate best overall. Open weights reduce lock-in, self-hosting changes compliance, and the China OpenStack is no longer just DeepSeek. It is Kimi GLM, QWen, and DeepSeek as a replaceable layer, which is a brutal reset for vendor pricing power. The deployment examples are where the story stops being theoretical. CrowdStrike wants Mythos inside AIDR, with 1,800 AI applications monitored, 1 trillion events per day, and 280 adversary groups in view. ByteDance's reported $5.6 billion Huawei order points at infrastructure migration. OpenAI puts Spud directly into ChatGPT and Codex, giving us 3 deployments and 3 kinds of leverage. The concept map explains why the old best model question fails. Mixture of experts means huge capacity without full per token cost. Open weights mean less lock-in when teams need deployment control. Project Glasswing means safety through distribution control. Repeated context discounts mean stable system prompts can get dramatically cheaper. These are architecture variables now, not footnotes underneath a benchmark chart. In 6 months, the unsettled parts may matter more than the launches. Independent evals are already slower than model releases. Export control policy needs a separate theory for training and inference. Mythos could become a template for biosecurity or infrastructure models, or stay a one-off. And if GPT 5.6 ships quickly, the next release cycle could reset the battle again by the end of 2026. So, which frontier would you route your own product toward? Premium capability, cheap open weights, or a gated specialist model? There is no single best model now. There is only the workflow, the risk, and the bill. I will keep tracking this, and I will catch you in the next one.